Hi, everyone. Before I get to the episode, I want to take a moment to address the United States Supreme Court decision to overturn Roe v. Wade on June 24th, which stripped away the right to have a safe and legal abortion. Restricting access to comprehensive reproductive care, including abortion, threatens the health and independence of all people, which we have already seen with abortion bans and restrictions in countries like Poland and Malta. This decision has dire consequences and could have harsh repercussions for other landmark decisions within the United States. I encourage our audience, American and otherwise, to learn more about what you can do to help at podvoices.help. I encourage you to speak up, take care, and spread the word.
Welcome to the Ellevate podcast, conversations with women changing the face of business. And now your host, Maricella Herrera.
Hi, everyone. Hope you're doing well. I'm Maricella Herrera, the CEO of Ellevate Network and host of the Ellevate podcast. And I'm joined by a very special guest who is always kind of behind the scenes on the podcast, but will be my co-host for a few episodes. Megan, how are you doing?
Doing well. How are you? Yeah, you guys will sometimes hear. Well, I co-hosted 2 of them a while back when you had no voice. But sometimes,
I forgot about that.
Yeah, sometimes they can hear me say, like, have random little cut-ins. Like a few weeks ago, I make one solo appearance, and that is to explain the term "hot girl summer." So if you heard that on the podcast, that was me.
Yeah, Megan has always kept us up to date with the current trends because we're not that. I personally am not that good at keeping up with those.
It's fun. You just got to be on TikTok.
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah,
that's a hole. I feel like if I start, I will never get out of.
100%. I can't recommend it enough, but you are completely correct. It will completely take over your life.
Will we have an Ellevate TikTok, Miss Ellevate social media?
It is in the works. We are in the planning stages. I don't want to reveal too much for people behind the scenes, but I can tell you that it is, as of right now, what we're recording, I am in the process of planning it out. So we're probably going to have an Ellevate TikTok. Be on the lookout.
I don't really know what that means, but I'm sure by the time we have it, I will have learned.
Yeah.
I will. I know you'll make it a point of making me understand what's happening.
Definitely.
So what have you been into this week? We're going to start doing this segment at the beginning of the show on what we've been reading, what we've been thinking about, what has been top of mind, or what you've been into this week. Anything you want to recommend, Megan?
Yeah. So I have actually been watching, this is actually a sporting event. I've been really trying to support more Olympic sports outside of the Olympics, because a lot of them really struggle to get funding and really struggle to get any kind of sponsorships. So I started with swimming and track and field, and I've really kind of fallen in love with both. So if you ever want just an amazing blend of cultures and like people coming together from all parts of the world, it's really beautiful. Watch track and field. The track and field world championships just finished up, and I have been frantically going through them. If you have ADHD like I do, it appeals to your ADHD because they'll be like, here's the high jump. All right, now we're going to cut to the 100-meter dash. All right, now we're going to cut to speed walking. All right, now we're going to cut to the triple jump. And like, it's the best thing ever. So that's what I've been thinking of. And I mostly say this because in the next few weeks, you're probably going to see some firsts in our first segment pop up, and you'll see, oh, this is World Athletics Championships. I wonder what Megan's been watching.
Well, you've always been into Olympic sports.
Oh my God, literally always. There's something about hundreds of nations coming together just for the beauty of sport, coming together, to compete, to support one another. I have always been a huge fan of the Olympics. People know that I love gymnastics. I follow it like any other sport outside of the Olympics, but like I've really wanted to get into more, and I've just fallen in love. And so if you want to watch them, I watch them all on Peacock, because Peacock just has tons of, because it's NBC, has access to tons of the Olympic sports in the off season. So it's literally, there will just be like 7 hours of footage with commentary from a day of track and field. And I'll just put it on like while I'm at the gym working out, and it's just a really good distraction, or while I'm eating or something like that. It is just, it's so fun. And you learn so much about everything.
Cool. I mean, I'm not a follower of sports, but I will give it a try. I'm curious.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to give me anxiety or not. I can try it.
No, because it's really beautiful, because everybody's like, I mean, obviously there's people who really want to win, and you know, you cheer on your home team and you cheer on everything, but ultimately it's just whoever medals, you can celebrate them. That's ultimately what I do with the Olympics, is I get into everybody. And so I root for whoever wins. I mean, that sounds like I'm bandwagony, but like I try to be happy for everybody who wins, because you'll see somebody from France will cross the finish line first, and it's their first big international medal, and she's just crying her eyes out. This was the Indoor World Championships earlier this year, and it was just a beautiful moment with somebody that I had never heard of previously, but now like it's a beautiful moment that I can still remember.
Very cool. So, interestingly enough, what I've been very into is doing some research around motivation. I spoke at an event for El Salvador, for the Chamber of Commerce in El Salvador, a couple of weeks ago, and it was on productivity, values, and purpose, and how your values, your purpose affect your productivity. So that sent me into this rabbit hole on wanting to learn more about motivation and learning more about how psychologically we as humans are motivated. And honestly, it's fascinating how there's all the things that we're seeing in the workplace right now, all the trends that we're seeing are just so linked back to fundamental theories of needs and motivations for humans that why don't we know this? This has been around forever. So like we want autonomy. That's where flexibility comes in. We have a psychological need to master something, to feel competent. That's where all the pressure on learning and wanting to learn more and wanting to upskill is coming from. So we want connection. That's a very basic human need. And that's why we want to trust the place we work at. So it's fascinating. I've been going down a very interesting route, and I wish I could share some of the articles I've been reading. But just do a little quick search on Google on the self-determination theory of motivation, and you're going to get tons of insights that I think is just wildly interesting. But I'm a nerd, you know that.
Yeah, no, I definitely will probably need to check that out, because as somebody who I mentioned going to the gym, so I have been wanting to I don't want this to be a weight number thing, but I've been wanting to get, healthier and get myself, to a better place. So I actually joined a gym yesterday. Yesterday was my first day.
Yeah.
And so maybe I'm going to need to check those out for some human motivation tips.
Yeah, well, I'm actually writing an article right now that you're going to check out later today, because I need your thoughts on it, about how the workplace trends kind of come back to those basic needs. But in terms of the workout, though, I'm starting to train for the marathon. I'm in a couple of weeks in for marathon training. And I'll tell you, it's just about remembering how good you feel after you do things. That would be my best advice for you when trying to get motivated to go to the gym. Remind yourself.
That is so 100% true. And borderline, it's almost a meme at this point, but it's a joke of saying, I have terrible news, folks. I actually ate healthy and I feel better. Or I have terrible news, folks. I moved my body and I feel better. But truly, when I finished the gym yesterday, or when I was nearing the end, at the beginning, it was hard. I was like, this sucks. There's no point in this. And then by the time I was part 3 through, I was like, oh, this feels good. And my body is moving. And I was like, terrible news, everyone. Exercise does, in fact, as Elle Woods so wisely put it, make you happy.
Yep. That's your brain releasing all those chemicals. This is why us runners get the runner's high. And once you get that, you're going to keep running.
Yeah. But speaking of motivation to work out, I remember reading an article a little while back on motivation to work out that back in the old days when we were hunters and gatherers and farmers, humans didn't need to do any kind of exercise extracurricularly. We just got it in our daily lives. So that's why it's so hard for humans to get themselves to be motivated for any kind of planned exercise, is because we're supposed to get it normally. So it's just all about overcoming that. And that's why it can be so tricky. But then once you actually get into it, our bodies release endorphins and everything because it's saying, yes, this is what we want you to be doing. It's just hard to get yourself to do it.
Well, once you start, well, we're talking about all of these things, which is, you know, how your brain works, how your motivation works, which is kind of leads us really well into our next guest. Today, we're going to listen to Kristy's conversation with Maureen Chiana. Maureen is a neuro leadership and resilience trainer and consultant. She leverages brain science insights and emotional intelligence to help leaders and organizations become more human and help their people maximize brain power to transform how they lead, work, and live. Maureen is fantastic. She's been in our executive roundtables and our rising leaders roundtables, always collaborating and always giving great advice to our community. So I'm very, very excited to see what she says on the podcast.
Me too, because if I'm not wrong, because I know that I went to a roundtable, a rising leader roundtable that she hosted, and I know we were looking for future podcast guests. And if I'm not wrong, I believe I reached out to her and said, do you want to be on the podcast? Because I loved you in the roundtable, and I think our podcast listeners would just love to hear from you.
She's fantastic. So we'll go to Kristy's interview with Maureen.
Hello, Maureen. Welcome to the Ellevate podcast.
I'm really excited about this.
I am excited about this as well. You and I have spent a lot of time together over the past couple of years at the Executive Roundtable and through other Ellevate events and touch points. And it's been an honor to get to know you. I've seen how much your passion and background really adds to the depth of conversations that we're having and adds a very powerful perspective talking about neuroscience and leadership. And so I can't wait to dig into this conversation. But I wanted to get started just learning a little bit more about you. Could you share a bit about your story with our listeners?
So yeah, I would say that I would start from where I am now, which is that I'm a neuro leadership and emotional intelligence consultant and facilitator. And our main focus is really helping leaders and organizations drive behavior change by creating new habits, by just getting leaders to understand how they can improve how they engage with others, how they motivate themselves and others as well, and make better decisions, and just realizing the impact of what goes on in their brain has on their behavior. And I got into this through a really strange route because my background is in biomedical sciences. And I worked in research for quite a few years, then became a university lecturer. But just at the end of before the millennium, I went into IT and became a Microsoft systems engineer. And during the IT crash, I kind of thought to myself, what can I do? And I decided to open a hair and beauty salon that catered for Afro hair because where I live in the UK, there was no salon that catered for our hair. So we really had to travel a long way into London to have our hair done. But this experience was what really had a big impact on me because it was the first time of really managing people. I had worked as a freelancer for years as a consultant, but never really managing at that kind of level. And 4 years later, I closed the business, lost a lot of money, and I felt so low. I literally felt like a failure. And that was when I decided to, or in a way, I won't say I decided to, I was forced to in a way because I felt so low and I kept wondering how I would get out of this feeling. It was just such a low time for me because 4 months after I closed the business, I also lost my mom. And I just started asking the question, how do people bounce back after failing? How do people lose so much and still get up and keep going and start all over again? And that was when I just got curious about the brain, because I knew that what was going on with me, it was the thoughts I was having, they were literally spiraling me out of control. And that was how I got into neuroscience. And by this time, I had gone back into education management. And I was using the whole concept of this brain science and working with people. And I really wanted to test it out and see how it worked. And that was it. I started working with students, working with teachers, working with managers, and just seeing massive changes, massive shifts, just by getting people to understand or reconnect with their brains.
Maureen, your story is so amazing on many levels. I mean, just the twists and turns, the curiosity, the taking risks. I love all of it. And you mentioned this resilience, right? And that became this almost purpose for you, understanding, for yourself and your own lived experience, but also for others, like what is resilience, and how do we approach it? So I'd ask, could you start just by, in your own words, defining what resilience means?
Resilience is when you are able to, I would say, bounce forward. So bounce back up and bounce forward. It's when you're able to keep going against all challenges and obstacles that you encounter. Because naturally, when we encounter problems, when we encounter obstacles or challenges, the tendency is to one, run away from it, or the tendency is to stay down, because that's what the brain naturally does. So resilience is the ability to really keep pushing ahead, when you're facing those challenges, or even when you go down, to be able to come back up, which is what I described when I went through that difficult time. It's the question of, how do I get back up, because I knew I was quite low. And there's always a difference between resilience and grit, because with resilience, most times you're actually down, or you're at a place where you don't expect to be. So it's being able to come back out of that, to keep moving forward, or to come back up again. For me, that was the driving force for me, because that was what really got me into doing what I'm doing now. And at the time, I didn't even realize that it was resilience. And because I was just at such a low place. But it was that curiosity of wanting to know, how do I get back out? And that was discovering, I would say, the power of the brain. And when I discovered how powerful that, or rather, I discovered that I actually had a control over what was going on in my brain, and I could do something about it. It's realizing that choice that I had to do something different. That was the turning point for me, because I then was able to get myself out of that low place, now get back up, and even start helping others and starting a business again. Because I vowed when I closed the salon that I would never run a business again. But by the time I then discovered that, actually, no, I can't do this. It's really just being able to understand my brain, rewire my brain. And that's the whole essence of resilience. It's just understanding how you can rewire your brain. Because what's going on in the brain is just normal. So we just need to understand what's going on and then change it.
Are we all capable of being resilient?
We're all capable of being resilient, but the interesting thing is, you need to know how to be resilient. But yes, we are capable of doing it. Now, the length of time it will take to do it will differ from for different people, because of the current wiring that we have. And that wiring we have in our subconscious brain is really determined from our upbringing, our exposures, our lifestyle, what we've exposed ourselves to be. And one thing I always tell people is that we're all different. You see, there's a saying that goes, you see the world not as it is, but as you are. So you see the world based on your own wiring. So, for example, someone that had been brought up, if I'll use myself as an example, my mom always taught me that I could do anything I wanted. So, in a way, I attribute my own resilience to her because when she passed, all I kept thinking of is all the things she told me that I can do this and I will bounce back. And that was what helped me. So I think the key thing is really understanding yourself. And that is where that self awareness, self discovery really becomes key. Understanding that wiring and then going, okay, this is what my brain is saying now, but I now need to change this narrative. I need to change this wiring. I need to change this thought process I'm having. And because that is what is going to help me get out of this situation. So, yes, we are all capable of being resilient.
And what are some of the ways that we can better tap into that resilience, better understand ourselves and our minds and how we can really, because I mean, to be honest, like if I were to talk about myself, I don't know if I would consider myself resilient. And when I think back in my life, I mean, absolutely I am, but we don't always see that in ourselves. And what are the ways that we can discover it?
I think one of the key things about, Shelley, when we talk about emotional intelligence is just really paying attention to yourself. And one thing I always tell people when I work with them is start paying attention to the thoughts you're having. Start paying attention to, what you say, so things that you actually say, because a lot, those things actually come from our subconscious. There's this, in 90% of what we do is driven by our subconscious brain. So those are the things we need to start paying attention to. And then when you see yourself actually saying things that are limiting, that's the time to really start changing that narrative. And also, paying attention to things that you do, the actions that you take, without thinking about them. Just start paying attention to those actions. And one of the key things to always start doing, Shelley, when trying to build up resilience, is one, what are you saying? What are you doing? And then, making those decisions that, okay, I'm going to change this narrative. I'm going to change this action. And I'll give myself as an example. When I was feeling so low, one of the things that I was doing a lot was just staying away from everyone because I felt so ashamed. And then I started setting challenges for myself to start going out. That even when people ask me the question about the business, I'll talk about it and say, well, the business failed, and stop identifying as a failure, because all I was saying before is I was a failure. I was a failure. That's all you kept hearing me say. And I had to change that narrative. No, I'm not a failure. Actually, I'm quite a brave person to actually set up a business like that, but it didn't work out. Now, what are the lessons that I've learned from that? And just, being able to, start just changing those narratives and stretching myself. Those are the key things, because resilience is like building a muscle. I always say, for example, when you go to the gym, and you want to start building muscles, it takes time to really get to where you want to be, whether you want to get into shape or build muscles. It's the same thing with resilience. What we're doing is creating a new wiring in the brain, which takes time. So it's the repetition that rewires the brain and then helps. And those repetition is what then becomes your pattern, will then become your default pattern. So it's being patient with yourself, but just being consistent and keep doing those actions you need to do. And for everyone, it's different, but it's just identifying what those things are and doing them. And one of the key things to really do is, I don't know who said this quote, it's be comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's the key to building your resilience.
Yeah, I love that quote because, we think inherently we want to feel comfortable. There's security and comfort. But when you push yourself, right, and when you push yourself, that could mean failure. That could mean, shifting course. It could mean many different things, but it also pushes you to be better and to learn and to grow. And so I want to give a hypothetical here. Say I'm working for a company and I, have a big presentation in front of the company, and I've been nervous for it, but I've been practicing, and I think it's good, and I go out there, and I just bomb it. I skip over slides, I forget what I was supposed to say, just like it's bad, and I walk away, and I am like, I'm never gonna give a presentation again. That's it. I'm done. I can't let it go. The next couple of weeks, that's all I think about. I'm so embarrassed, and I'm just demotivated to go back and try that again. And what should I do? I mean, you just talked about that positive self-talk. It's like, no, Kristy, yep, you got out there and did it. I'm so proud of myself for at least trying. Now I know where I can improve. There's a long road ahead of me. I'm going to keep trying at it, right? And that's great. But what are there other ways to approach that? And part of why I'm asking is I know you work with companies and teams, and just thinking about this professional environment of there's failures all the time. I mean, of course, Maureen, with you starting a business, taking that risk and it fails, and that's so much a part of your life. But every day, I think we fail in little and big ways. And it's about how we, like you said, build that muscle, overcome it. So in that hypothetical situation, what would you tell that person?
You see, Kristy, there's one thing about human nature. We are social beings. And the fact is that we're built to support each other, to connect with each other. One easy and quick way is to talk to someone who will be helpful. It's always also being careful who you speak to, because sometimes, especially in the scenario you've given, when those thought processes are really spiraling out of control, at that point you probably will not even be able to stop yourself, because you see, the more you start the story, what the brain then does is that it starts confirming what you've given it to you. So you start that process of, I'm not good enough, I can't give presentations, anytime I do it, it always fails, or it always flops. Once you start that narrative, the subconscious will give you even more stories that are negative, because I always say that the brain will answer the questions you give it. So whatever you give it, that's what it will give you a response to. It will open so you start seeing more of that. So the best way with that, and this is where it then becomes really important for you to really be aware that, okay, this is what is happening. I need help. I need to stop this. And that's the point, that it's either speaking to someone that that can help you, somebody that can really help you. I kind of put the brake on that brain to enable you start to shift that whole process, shift that thought process to a more positive one, to help you see that, okay, what, you did it, it was bad, but what did you learn from it? What can you do differently? And I actually had an experience like that, where I went for an interview, and it was someone that I know that had linked me up with the company, and I was invited for an interview. And I got there, I was so nervous. And I've explained this in some of my talks, that when we get very nervous, what happens is that the emotional part of our brain gets activated, and then it then deactivates our thinking brain. And that's why we go blank when we're really nervous. So, for example, public speaking, presenting, and scenario you've just given. When I got in there, all the questions they asked me, I think I could only answer one. As I came out from the room, just before I got to the elevator, all the answers kept flooding back. And I felt so embarrassed, so ashamed, because this person that had introduced me, can imagine the conversation that would have gone on later. saying that, oh, but I thought you said she was so good, but she couldn't even answer a single question, or I think she only answered one. So I felt so embarrassed. But at that point, because I was aware, I was now able to really to talk myself out of it and say, okay, see, look at the pros and cons. What have I learned from it? What will I do differently next time? At the end of the day, there's not much I can do about what has happened. What I can do about is the future. And I was able to talk myself around. But honestly, the best thing is to get someone to support you, or do it yourself. Just make it, start looking, instead of focusing on that negative, it's flipping it to start thinking of what you can control. What can I control? What can I do differently? What would and just taking it, one step at a time. And that's the best, that's the way to do it. Because even as leaders, surely when I work with leaders, that's exactly what I get them to do with their people, because usually when they're going through change or people really mess up, because if not, that whole process, that negative process, just keeps spiraling. So what we want to do is flip it to the growth. Thinking of the opportunities, thinking of the good things that you've done in the past, reminding yourself of what you've done before well, and what you can do differently, and hankering onto that.
And I love that advice for managers too, because as leaders, we often talk about building resilient teams. We want, fail fast, recover fast, keep going. It's part of business. But seeing the role that we as people managers and leaders have in helping to cultivate that and helping to support our teams, asking those questions, giving that type of support and feedback and perspective is really amazing. So thank you for sharing that, Maureen.
You see, and also with leaders, sorry, I'm just going to add as well that with leaders, creating an environment where you allow people make mistakes is important, because if every time someone makes a mistake and they're told off, or you come down really hard on them, people will stop trying. And also when they do it and fail, because you've come down hard on them, that actually hinders them from building their own resilient muscle, prevents them from being resilient. Because what will be going in their brain is, okay, I've made a mistake again, I've got it wrong again. And what they're hearing is that I'm not good enough. In fact, you might have said something completely different, but the tone you use, the emotion you use, what they will be hearing is, I'm not good enough, I can't do this. And that, one person's resilience is hindered, the others will see what's happening, or the way you've responded to one person, and that would also hinder other people. So to really build resilience as a team is creating the environment where people, when they make mistakes, it's actually supporting them through it, asking the questions. How would we do it differently? What have we learned from it? How can we improve? That's where there's learning and growth.
And Maureen, thinking about the time we're coming through, the pandemic, we're talking about a recession, social, racial injustice, there's a war, there's, we could go on. And I think just, as humans, I can feel like we need a little bit of resilience now, to get up and to move forward. And that action piece is hard. I mean, even you yourself said that after your business, you shut down your business, you kind of wanted to hide inside, right? And you had to set goals for yourself to go out there and to start again and to be resilient. What are other ways that we can really, tap into we've talked about ways to tap into our resilience, but tap into it and to take action, and get that momentum going, start to really be more proactive about our lives. And how do we turn resilience into action?
You see, I think the bottom line is, it's being intentional. we've got to really be intentional about what we want to do. We've got to, so that, and it comes down to planning. It comes down to making that decision about, this is what I want to achieve. This is what I want to, this is where I'm going, and just really staying focused. One of the things I always say is, stay on your lane. Know where you're going and stay on your lane. Because one, there's so many distractions. Like you see, there's so much going on in the world. And if we start paying attention to a lot of things, we are human. As those informations are coming into our brain, they would really cripple us. So we've got to set boundaries ourselves to what we are taking in, set boundaries to what we are actually allowing to, you know, um, affect us, and just making those decisions about, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And it's starting small. It's when we talk about goal setting, that's basically what it is. It's just setting those goals of what we want to do and chunking them down into little things that we're going to do each day, and taking small steps every day and reviewing what we've done and saying, okay, at the end of each day, at the end of today, what did I do? What went well? What did not go well? What would I do differently? And just going one day at a time like that. And before you know it, you've started you've been repeating a pattern over, and that is what resilience is all about. It's repeating something over and over till it becomes a default pattern for us. Because one of the key things to always realize is that it's the thought processes, that it's those thoughts that are going on in our brain, that drive our behavior. That's what creates the actions we take. And a lot of it is done very unconsciously. So what we want to do is to start being conscious of what we're doing, the actions we're taking, and being intentional about them. And there are different things to really help us to be intentional. Mindfulness is a great one to just start mindfulness practice. Just even meditating, planning, planning your day, planning exactly what you're going to do each time, for different aspects of life, whether you're running a business, whether you're employed. But it's really having a plan of exactly what you're going to be doing and taking those steps one step at a time and building that up.
Maureen, thank you so much for this. I think it's exactly what many of us need to hear right now about resilience, to know we're not alone in how we're sometimes, when we have that setback, but to know it's a muscle that we continue to work at, continue to strengthen, lean on our communities who are there to support us as well, and to champion us and to lift us up, and to create a plan for action and clarity on what that looks like, and the focus to move forward one step at a time, one day at a time, but we can all do it. Any final thoughts for our listeners, Maureen?
I think I like how you ended it. The fact is that we can all do it. And it's just remembering that, you're not alone. If you need to seek help, seek that help. And, you just remember, I think one thing that's worth remembering is that our brain is only doing what it's doing to keep us safe. So, anything that those thought processes that are going on in our brain, all the brain is trying to do is to protect us. So we now need to make the decision, or just realize that actually I can control what's going on in my brain. And if I'm struggling to do it, I'll seek help. I'll speak to someone, just get someone to help me. But, the key thing is, don't let your brain control your life. You take that control back. And, so that, I would say, get back into the driver's seat of your life and be the one driving your brain instead of the brain driving you.
Well, thank you, Maureen, so much for joining us today on the Ellevate podcast.
Thank you so much, Kristy, for having me. Thank you.
Well, we're back. I love that. And it's always so great to hear from Maureen. I'm going to reach out to her and tell her I'm so excited about this podcast airing, and hopefully I'll get to see her soon.
Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait for she's always at Ellevate events, so I'm gonna have to see her soon.
Yeah, so if you want to hang out with Maureen, with me, with some of our Ellevate team members and our wonderful community, join us for one of our weekly roundtables. We have great stuff coming up. I'm leading our executive roundtables all Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern. And we're going to be talking next week about the new norms for non-traditional teams and teamwork. If you're a rising leader, so if you are running a team, coming up the ranks within your company, and want to build a better culture from the inside out, come to our Rising Leaders Roundtable. Those are Thursdays at noon Eastern. And they're going to be talking about sparking curiosity to lead yourself and others beyond high performance. And if you're an entrepreneur, you're starting your own business, or even just thinking about it, join our Entrepreneur Roundtable on Thursdays at 4 p.m. Eastern. They'll be talking about scaling you. So optimizing your finite time. Honestly, I'm not an entrepreneur. I am a business leader, though, and I am very interested in that topic.
No, the number of times that, as again, I am a identify wholly with Rising Leader, but the number of entrepreneur ones that I will sign up for because their topics are blow me out of the water, so many.
Yeah, they're great. It's a great group. And Megan, we're going to go to our firsts, but I cannot for the life of me start this list. I think it has to be you.
I think I couldn't possibly tell what you mean by that. But so in our firsts, our History Makers segment, Simone Biles became the youngest person to win the Presidential Medal of Freedom at 25 years old. Maricella, just so you know, gave me a Simone Biles sweatshirt for Christmas last year. I am the biggest Simone Biles fan in the entire world. I mentioned earlier I follow gymnastics outside of sport. I adore her. I watched the presentation. It's amazing. Oh, just yes. Chef's kiss.
Yeah, well, that's why you needed to go first today.
Oh, yeah.
Sandra Douglas Morgan became the first Black woman to be appointed president of an NFL team.
Veronica Merrifield became the first trans woman to be chair of the board of directors at the Every Woman's Center.
Chantrell Fraser became the first Black woman to earn a doctorate in biochemistry at Florida International University.
Kimberly Garcia Leon became the first person from Peru to win a medal at the World Athletics Championships with her dual golds in the 20K and 35K race walks.
Wow.
Yeah, Peru had never won a medal in anything, and she took 2 golds. It was a huge deal.
Wow. Nania Woods launched Portland's first Black Book Festival. It's always exciting to celebrate first. If there's anything you want to celebrate with us, please send it over, podcast@ellevatenetwork.com, and we'll give you a shout out.
You can also, I run our social media accounts. You can DM it to us. I'm always checking our DMs, especially on Instagram. But if you want to send it on Facebook or Twitter, LinkedIn doesn't have business DMs. But whatever you want to do, if you want us to celebrate your first, send it my way and I will put it in there so fast.
You know, it's funny. We as women, and this is also another thing I could talk about for hours, which is how bad we are at celebrating what we accomplish. I have taken on this role that is very exciting for me, to be leading a company that I love, that I've worked for so long, with a team that basically I helped create. And yet I still haven't celebrated it. Like I still feel weird saying like, oh yeah, I got this, or, yeah, I'm the first woman of color to lead Ellevate that's been around for 20 plus years. And it's important that we do celebrate. So please, please, please give yourself a shout out and we'll help you amplify.
Okay, so one additional first this week, Maricella Herrera, who was featured in the Broadsheet newsletter. If you guys don't follow the Broadsheet newsletter, you should be. That and the 19th newsletter, amazing. Became the first woman of color to lead Ellevate Network.
Yay! Well, we'll see you back here next week. And we are going to be talking. So Kristy's going to be talking. She's still left us with an incredible amount of interviews, which is amazing because she's so good at it. So we're going to be hearing from Maricella, who is the co-founder and co-CEO of Shine, an app that centers on Black and Brown voices and inspires users to look after their mental health. Shine was created to provide traditional self-care support to different communities so they felt connected, accepted, and heard. And honestly, it's a great app. I've been following them since they launched. Highly recommend.
Yeah, I remember when I booked this one, you said, I've been trying to get her for Mobilize Women for a while.
Yeah, they're great. So super happy to have her on the show, and we'll see you next week.
See you then.
Thanks so much for listening to Ellevate. If you like what you hear, help a girl out. Subscribe to the Ellevate podcast on iTunes, give us 5 stars, and share your review. Also, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Ellevate NTWK, that's Ellevate Network, and become a member. You can learn all about membership and all the great things that Ellevate Network is doing at our website, www.ellevatenetwork.com. That's ELLEVATE network.com. And special thanks to our producer, Catherine Heller. She rocks. And to our voiceover artist, Rachel Griesinger. Thanks so much, and join us next week.